And so I couldn't find it in MLS, and it was a Birmingham realtor. So I called the guy, and then I looked it up on Realtor.com. Here's that house priced at $260,000. It's a 3-2, and it does have a garage.
260?
Yeah, and it's only 17, about 1,800 square feet, but the pictures, it's not updated at all. I mean, like, it still has carpet and all of that. So I had called him before I found it on the internet. And so when he called me, I said, well, I think I found it. I said, is the price really 259? And he said, yeah. Of course, I told him who it was. And he said, is that too high? And I said, well, I just bought one down the street. And I said, I'm pulling comps now. I said, but I didn't pay near that for it. Mine's updated. And he was just like, oh, okay. And so I'm not going to tell him where it needs to be priced. So anyway, I think,
I looked down south when I was down south.
yeah, expensive.
Everything has gone up like up here. And people are buying like, but then that
Important.
ain't buying from him. I'm not buying from him. My friend John rode me around and he said, well, here's some lots to build. I said, I don't want to build, John. I want a existing house, but I don't want a fixer-upper. And I don't want a mobile home.
Yeah.
I said, want I said, I don't have to have a really big house, but Katie, my God, the prices down there have just gone up so high, and there's not really inventory down there. There's brand new stuff, but this that Horton guy, and I told John, I said, I am not buying from him, period. End of story. I will not buy from him.
Well, it's a box builder. I mean, they build here, but they just, yeah, I mean,
said,
they have,
I just not.
they're just sorry. Yeah.
And I said, so he says, well, what about somewhere else? Because that was down close to Pensacola in that area. And then he says, you don't want to be in Pensacola because they have high property tax, but they have no state tax.
What about a condo?
That would, that would be fine. But I said, what I'll have to do is, I thought of you, is you have a friend down there that can look. I said, John, I'm not going to be homeless. I have to, which I think have to move. I'll just stay where I'm at. I'm not putting my house up for sale or doing anything until I know.
If you get a condo, I mean, you have to pay condo fees or whatever.
Mhm.
But the nice thing about a condo is, because I was asking Uncle Jim, because he owes a couple at the Mystique. And I said to him, I said, well, just out of curiosity, why did you choose a condo versus a single family? And he said, because I don't have to worry about roofs. I don't have to worry about, exterior. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Mhm.
And so that made a lot of sense because, down there at the beach with that salt, it just wreaks havoc on the house.
John said, you got to realize down here, he said, do you really want down here? He said, the mold
And I told us it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear us? Somebody that's on the screen, give me a thumbs up. Katie Douglas, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right again. Somebody, anybody, can y'all hear me? Oh, perfect.
Can you hear me? I can hear
So
you.
we're in the conference room. If anybody's on their way here, the air is working much better down here. And we today, our whole format, I have 2 housekeeping things, and then we're gonna have Amy McKinney, right?
Mhm.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Appraiser, talk with us this morning. So have your questions ready. This is our one-on-one. We may never be able to catch her again where she's spending time with us. So get your questions ready. And as a reminder, it's the end of June. Transmittal is coming up. If you have a June closing, you have not submitted the commission request to us. We do not know about it. We cannot check your documents. We cannot pre-do anything. So when you are so happily bringing that closing in on the 30th, it may not be able to be processed. So please be mindful of that. We wrap up each month and transmit that month, and make sure that all of your stuff is in so that you can get paid quick and painlessly, as everything document wise is pre-approved and you're just ready to roll. The other thing was I've had some agents say they didn't know we ACH. So if you would like direct deposit your commission check, get with Tony, he'll get you the form and you can submit that. Anything else this morning before we begin? Okay, we're gonna hand it over to Amy. She is the lovely lady sitting across from me. I hope that it's okay for y'all.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Kim is gonna start us with questions after Amy introduces herself.
Oh, I know many of y'all. Amy McKinney. I've been here appraising in Montgomery, Ottawa, and Elmore County, sometimes Lowndes and Macon, Bullock. Been doing it about almost 17 years now. So seems like it's been a minute. And that's it. I hope I can answer some questions.
Okay.
That's on you, Kim.
All right, I'll start, but you guys jump in if you have any questions. Homes have appreciated a lot in the last couple of years. How much do you see that, how much do you think they've appreciated over the last few years? And do you see those values continuing to rise?
Well, I didn't do any statistics before I came as far as
That's fine.
each county and or each sub area. And I think we have a lot of variances as far as appreciation. And a lot of it still has to do with condition of the property, which we're seeing a lot more properties having been rehabbed prior to selling them. And so that's added to the natural appreciation. But what has blown me away every time is the appreciation that we've had in the new construction over the past. I mean, we have some people that have bought their house just in 2018 and 19, new construction home, not having put a penny into it other than just paying their mortgage. And they're selling it for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more. I never would have dreamed that when I was doing these beginning ones, maybe out in Bonterre or Boykin Lakes or some of these others, that they would appreciate so fast and so much. And people are still buying new constructions, way over what you can buy the resale properties for, even though those resellers, I mean, I've done some jobs for some people that have made a bunch of money. And I'm like, why didn't I do this? If I could have seen it coming, I would have. But so do I see it continuing? That is the bazillion-dollar question. That is, that's a question for Maria Bartolome, who does the financial stuff, or all the other people that do that. I hope so. I think appreciating at this rate, probably not, but maybe that's a good thing that it doesn't. But I think even if the values goes down, I think the fact that the interest rates are so low, people will have more equity in their house than they would have if they had bought at a higher rate. So there will be some padding there if the value goes down, because their equity will be higher. So it might might be as devastating as what we would think. That makes sense to everybody.
Before you guys move on, Katie, is it better? I switched the speaker on the conference. It's better. Okay. Trying to figure it out, guys. Trying to figure it out. She's dropping lots of nuggets. I hope you're taking notes. Okay. This is recorded.
Okay, how much value do you give, extras in a house? I mean, or what would give a house a little extra value? And I wrote down a few things like how much value is an extra bedroom, you know, a 4 versus 3? How much is an extra bath, an updated kitchen or bath?
And those are, a lot of those numbers are always changing according to the market. And it used to be like updated kitchens and baths and things like that. You might throw, you know, $10,000 or $20,000 toward them, but now it's so expensive to do those items that I'm seeing it more, sometimes $20,000 or $40,000. You know, what somebody's willing to pay.
Just because the cost of materials.
The cost of materials is so high, and when the rates are so low, it is a lot less expensive for me to buy the house with it already done versus buying the house and then having to go pay for it myself using my cash, where I'd rather borrow that money at, you know, 2%. So people were paying a lot more for those items. Now, it depends on the neighborhood you're in. Like a pool in a high neighborhood, you could give as much as $15,000. You have this beautiful pool area and this decking and whatever, and because that might cost $30,000 to put in. So the old days of just giving a $3,000 to a pool, that's out the door.
That was one of my
And
questions.
it especially changed, and I saw it specifically at that when COVID hit,
Right.
because
It became a
people.
living space.
It
more than just
became
like
a
pool.
living
Right.
space. It's like you cannot depend on going on vacation.
Yeah.
You can't depend on your neighborhood pool when they got a lock on the gate.
Yeah, they're
And
not letting you in.
Several the pool companies, they had lead times that went from just a few weeks to a year and a half.
Yes.
And so people realized that they needed to be able to entertain themselves and their children. The other thing that changed during COVID is additional dwelling units and living spaces for parents or things like that. People began to put those in the guest houses, those things. You used to just put a little bit of money, and appraiser would have a hard time making the case to the underwriter that was worth more. Well, now it's not, because people didn't want their parents to go to assisted living, and they felt they found value. And I think that's going to continue as long as we're scarred by this pandemic mentally, you know, of what it did, of being able to have that space. The other one, which goes to the 4th bedroom, is the home offices. So but the people, you know, used to just give a few $1,000s for a 4th bedroom as a space for another child, but now people need that. We have a lot more working from home, and that's going to continue. So I think that the neighborhoods where it's harder to give that space are the newer constructions where they have bonus rooms and things. So you have to kind of value, is it really a bedroom? You know, you might have a 4-bedroom with a bonus room and a 5-bedroom. Well, there's no difference between that, really, even though it doesn't have a closet. You know, that is the definition of a bedroom. But the market, what do we really care? You're really after that extra space for the bonus or the office or the whatever. So it's kind of tricky. As the values go up, you give more, because as a percentage, it's more than in some of the neighborhoods where you have smaller homes. You're gonna, you know, if you can get that 4th bedroom in a 1,800 square foot house, it is going to be worth something, because otherwise you're crammed into that space. It's less likely your comparables are going to have the bonus room and everything either. So you're probably talking a true difference between the 3 and 4. But I have seen, and appraisers I've talked to, is the amenities are becoming more and more important to the market than maybe they used to be. It used to be a lot more on square footage. Now it's, what do we have in that square footage? Do we have outdoor living? Do we have covered space outside? Do we have the at-home office? Has it been, buyers are a lot, I mean, buyers have always been educated, but they're a lot more we have more ways to be educated now of what we want. And we see these things on, this is just my opinion, I mean, this is on Instagram and Pinterest, you know, oh, that's beautiful, I love that, I love that. So then you're coming in, you're like, okay, well, I want that now. I mean, and so you're willing to pay more for those things. You've seen the images of the homes with the outdoor fireplace and the whatever. So I think that those details, buyers are becoming more discriminating about what they want, and with lower rates, we've all been able to do that, and it's, you know, different than when, you know, at my age, bought our first house. We were just glad to have a house. I mean, I couldn't remember if it had a laundry room or not when I bought it, because I wasn't looking at those things. I was like, oh, it's a house, you know? So, but I think even younger buyers are more savvy on what they want. And and y'all know that too, is your buyers, are they asking you about those things and discussing those things when they're looking, you know? So,
They're interested in the design.
This is shelter.
they're looking at the details of comfort seat. Well, that has this, and you know, there are differences. Buyers are not looking as deep as maybe what an appraiser would be, as far as, you know, I haven't seen buyers looking at maybe, have the windows been replaced as much? They are, okay. Yeah, you know, I have some
window,
that's
the energy efficient.
So they're wanting what we haven't been able to extract in our market is the insulation things, because we don't have enough data in MLS as an appraiser for me to go through and say that one had foam insulation, that one had I mean, you can, but it's not as easy to pull out. So, but they do want all the extras. They want the pool, they want the covered space, they want covered parking. I think it's bigger now than it used to be. What do you think?
The garages.
The garages over carports more than whatever. So those appraisers that I've talked to were now awarding more for those items, but that also means we're taking away more for the lack of those items. And that hurts. That hurts in a market where the values are going up, because then you have a relatively plain Jane house. And then if you're comparing it to other houses that have those features, it hurts. So it's easy when it's on one side, but you kind of have to try not to talk out of both sides of your mouth, and then make it less important, because the new, and I say new, it's been about 6 years, UAD format of all of our appraisals that go, and that's for every appraiser that in the country, that their appraisal winds up in Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. They run it through what's called a UAD database. And let's say I had said a condition, a property was well updated, not one that I did, but a comparable I used. If other appraisers said it wasn't, but they're going to come back to me and said, nobody else in your market said that this was. So Big Brother is watching appraisers.
They want the data.
They want the data. And if I adjust a pool at a certain amount and other appraisers are adjusting it somewhat different, they'll go, you adjusted that pool more than everybody else in your market has. You know, and so then it's my job to fight back and say, no, I have the data to support what I did. I'm sorry, they're wrong. Or, you know, maybe I'm wrong and everybody else is doing it this way. But that changed from years ago.
Ooh, sorry, everybody.
Somebody
Quick little wake up.
So how much are those things worth? More. And I've been doing it more, and I haven't gotten feedback that other people aren't. And then the people that I'm talking about some more. So people do, they want those. And then,
So for us, what I hear you saying, when we do a CMA, don't just look at the square footage. That's part of it, but also check in the amenities of the home and make sure that the price is justified through those things.
You could have 2 homes and one of them is, they're both 2,000 square feet, and one of them is $100 a square foot, and one of them is $105 a square foot. Which one's the better buy?
Depends on what's inside the home.
Correct. It depends on, one's 4-bedroom, it has a pool, it has outdoor living, it's been completely redone, it has a garage, and the other one is just 2,000 square feet with driveway parking and an open patio in the back and a stoop. So it's a huge difference in some markets where the amenities, now when you get into some neighborhoods, you know, like the Stone Martin or even a lot of the Louder homes, those builders, they build them all very similar. And a lot of them have a lot of the same amenities, and you can get a tighter range of price per square foot. It's easier to look at those when you're doing your CMA, the more similar, but the more homogeneous your neighborhood is, the easier it is to look at the price per square foot. But the more diverse it is, the more difficult it is. And the older it is, the harder it is, because different people have done different amounts of updating, you know, so.
Kind of like what's important to that the people living in the home, not necessarily what would be good for resale.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay,
Kim,
ready?
No,
And you guys, I apologize. I've got to be somewhere at 10 and it's like 10 minutes. So, but I can leave you these questions if you'll just put these in my mailbox.
Anything for you, Kim.
Okay, look, low appraisals. I'm kind of gonna take my last three questions and put them all together. Okay. Low appraisals, because there are sellers out there that are greedy at the moment.
Mhm.
And I'm working a deal right now where the house that has to close, their appraisal came in low because their square footage was wrong. And the appraiser measured,
Mhm.
you know, so the appraisal came in about 15,000 low, and they got to work through it then to buy my listing.
Mhm.
So if we have a low appraisal, how do we tactfully approach an appraiser? Tactfully. Like, we don't want to be, excuse me, everybody, but a smart ass, okay? And can we give you, are you okay, or are appraisers okay with us giving comps beforehand, maybe, of what we used and why we were thinking what we priced it at? Or, you know, if I have something grossly overpriced, I would never do
Right.
that.
No, that's a good question. Appraisers should always take any information in advance from the homeowner or the realtor, because
Okay.
you should be open to anything that anybody has to say. There might be reasons, unbeknownst to the appraiser, of what this has. You might have information. Granted, a lot of information I get from realtors is easily available to me on MLS, but it does not mean that they should not be gracious as far as accepting it, and should absolutely look at it, because just because you might have specific information on how it's similar, and bringing that up to the appraiser is always a good point. Just as much as, you know, something might be dissimilar, I might be able to say, well, it's dissimilar because of this, and you might say it's similar because of that. And if it can be used based on some similarity that they can't bracket, then that's good to have brought up. I mean, that's just my personal philosophy. I would take anything anybody had.
Or an old appraisal. I've told my sellers before, put your old appraisal on the table so they know it appraised more than you bought it
Right.
for.
And it might,
5
that
years
might
ago.
be helpful too, because let's say you're in a neighborhood where you have to go outside the neighborhood. I love to see where other appraisers went, because then if I go there and I get in trouble, I can say, I did what other appraisers did.
I
Which
followed this.
I thought, yeah, I agreed with what they did. I'm not the only one. And so it's helpful. It's helpful. And to say, well, that's old news, it doesn't matter, is not as responsive. And I'm not saying, I mean, some of them might do that. They might not give, I want to know what square footage they measured, because if I make a mistake, then I'd be like, okay, maybe they made a mistake, but if the number's really different, I'm like, okay, one of us has made a mistake, and I want to make sure it's not me. And I'll go back and say, okay, I'm not going to be so vain as to think I'm going to measure 100% correct every time. I've made mistakes and I've had to go back, you know, and go, something's not right. So it's very helpful to have that there. They should take any information. There's a few realtors in town that every time I do one of their listings, they have a packet, and it has the MLS sheets that they use to price that house. It's just standard procedure for maybe just like 2 realtors in town. I'm gonna take it. I don't, I mean, I look through it. I mean, I can't say I use them every time or whatever, but it's another, it is another piece of information in my work file, because a lot of us work on the basis of we don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get my license taken away. I don't want it. So if I have documentation, well, I appraised it for this, but then the realtor had this which would even have been more, you know, it's part of information in the market. There's only one way to correctly go about a dispute of value with an appraiser, and that's through the lender. The only person that can dispute a value, whether it's too high or too low, is the client. And every appraiser's client is an intended user, is solely the lender, the person that ordered it. It's not the buyer, even though they paid for it. It's not the seller. It's not the realtor. And just because they have a copy of the appraiser, and I have verbiage in mine, doesn't make them a part of the transaction. My transaction
For
is,
your part.
that appraiser is solely for the lender. The only I can't then have you come and say it's worth more, and then me go back to the lender and say it's worth more, because the underwriter has looked at that. I am solely responsible to the underwriter, the only person that can ask me. So what you do is you ask for the specific verbiage is a reconsideration of value. And so if your buyer or it doesn't happen with this, if you can't come up, if the lender is willing to have the value reconsidered, because the lender might have automated value modules that are exactly in line with my appraisal. And they're like, between this AVM and your appraisal, we're not going to lend any more than this. But if possibly their AVM is higher, my appraisal is lower, they might give the opportunity to go back and reconsider value. So it has to come from the lender to the AMC, which is the appraisal management company, to me as a reconsideration. And you just list out, 2 or 3 properties that you think are more similar than what's in the report or would be better comparables, and why. And I have to open the report back up, address each comparable, and either include it and change my value or write a statement on why it's not more similar. I'm forced to,
Justify your.
I am forced to look at those, look them up, date it, and re-sign the appraisal.
This is worth you coming today,
So
just that.
yeah, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Calling, yeah. Even if you called and, I've had realtors call and say, hey, I think this is better, this report's not right, and I look back and I'm like, you're right. I really probably should have used this based on what you're saying. And I can't change it. I can't go back and say, I'm like, look, you got to go through the channel. You got to tell your lender has to agree that possibly this needs a reconsideration. Have that property sent through. I'll go through the right channel. And that doesn't happen very often. That usually I write back and say, I didn't use it because of this, this, and this. I mean, that's 9 out of 10 times. I'm not going to change my report.
You don't just say this is why you're the realtor, not the appraiser.
Right. No.
That'd be faster.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 9 out of 10, I don't, because 9 out of 10 times I've looked at those.
Yeah.
But that's not, you have a right, you put time in this, you've done your research, you've talked to the buyers, you've talked to the sellers, and you have a right to make sure that your thing is, you have a right only to the extent that the lender feels like you have a right, because they might not care. They might not give 2 cents what you think. But if the lender is, oh, we're okay with this, and I don't know how it's over my pay grade, but it could be that they look about this buyer's super qualified, if we can bump this all up and everybody's happy. The underwriter knows all that. I don't know that. And that's like I said, it's over my pay grade. But they might go, we can push this a little bit, and they're good for it, and we're still going to sign up for it if we can get the appraiser to go up. So when they do send those reconsiderations, you know, sometimes it's like, okay, everybody in this process but me thinks it's okay to bump this up a little bit. Probably need to consider it, but I'm not gonna put myself on the line. I got one yesterday and I didn't change my value. One was a comparable that I had already seen. I'd taken a picture of it, I had it in the report and I pulled it out because it was gonna make actually gonna make the value go down. You'd be surprised, because the biggest reason that we don't put some of those in is because the realtor has looked at the price per square foot and decided that it's a higher price per square foot, so it should go in. But once you put it in and do all the adjustments, I'm like, so you want me to bring the value down? That's why I didn't put it in. Because the only thing it brings to the table is, and that maybe you're adjusting $40 a square foot. Well, it's not gonna come close to what, you know, I take stuff out that brings it down. So, like, no, trust me, you don't want that in there. Because then we're gonna be in worse shape. So it's kind of but it's worth trying. I mean, appraiser's not gonna put something in and bring it down unless they get really PO'd, you know, so, but that's the way you do it, a reconsideration request.
To the lender.
To the
Yeah.
one.
To the lender. But I mean, some appraisers you could call and say, hey, would this help? You know, if you have a good relationship with them, call and say, hey, if we reconsidered this, would this help? They might look it up. So I can't speak for everybody. Some appraisers might not pick up the phone at all or might not really care. But the way to make them care is the reconsideration request. And they have no choice because their client has sent that. They 100% must respond.
Gotcha.
So that's the way I would do it.
Those are my questions.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Those are good questions.
They were really good
Yeah.
questions.
I mean,
Anybody in Zoom land have a question for our guest appraiser?
I have a question.
come on, you guys.
Oh, I see Katie, I just don't hear you.
So I have a question.
Hold on, let me try to see if you're. Say something now.
So I have a question.
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so when people are doing the cash above the appraisal gap, there's no way of knowing in MLS if there was cash to gap the appraisal. So is that affecting values or is it just making the values go up? Because in MLS, all we see is what they paid for it.
You're talking about what for the appraisal part of it, or for later on when you see what a house sold for?
So, well, when you see what a house sold for, because I
When
have
you're
one
doing
under
your CMA.
right, you do the CMA. So I have one under contract now where there was an appraisal gap of $15,000. So when that deal closes, it will reflect the $15,000 cash that they paid above appraisal. But there's no way of knowing that when we go back and look in MLS. So is that not just driving the prices up?
Well, no, because the appraisal, the amount that they can mortgage plus the appraisal contingency, what they're willing to pay cash, that total contract price they sign, that's the market. And you certainly don't want appraisers setting the market. The market needs to be set by the buyers and the sellers who agreed on that that's the total amount that the buyer would get and that the seller would sell it for and the buyer would pay for it. So that is the true market price. Now, whether or not the appraiser only does for the lender and recommends the opinion of market value is maybe what can be supported for the lender to lend. We are going slightly above, but that's the new market price. So then when I do the next appraisal, I look back and I say that one sold for $300,000. Well, maybe they borrowed $285 and then they paid $15,000 gap. The important part was that the market paid $300. Now the market will, if it goes back down, the market will be the one driving it back down and saying, well, I'm not going to pay $300 for it. And that's really hard in this market when houses were selling lower because it couldn't make the appraised value, that's the appraiser setting the market. So it's hard because a house sells in 3 days with 10 offers, and I'm gonna come in and say, no, it's not worth that. I'm like, clearly it is.
Somebody was gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
10
Somebody was gonna pay
people wanted
for
to
it.
pay for it.
So, the lender wants to know the market value, and that was the market value was what the previous, amount that the buyer was willing to buy for. Yeah, prices go up, but that's just a natural market reaction. And, I try real hard not to set the market for the buyer and seller by going, no, this is what you have to, if you want to sell it, you can only sell it for this. That's not my place.
So basically, the only way to stop this trend is that the appraisal gap stops being relevant.
And the only way the appraisal gap will start being relevant is when buyers decide they're not going to pay.
Right.
Mhm.
And that
Or
hasn't
when,
happened yet.
or when sellers decide that they want to sell their house and they don't necessarily want the fullest amount that maybe they can pay. So that's up to people that are outside of us.
Yeah. That's between the buyer and
And
the seller.
so we let that go, and you wouldn't want that to limit what you price your house at, because if you can find somebody to pay that for the house you're gonna sell, you want the most amount for your
Right.
seller.
Right.
So it is a sticky wicket when we're trying to keep up with those prices. And that's what the gap was because the appraisers couldn't keep up, because we look to the past and not the future. So that's the way that appraisal contingency gap was in other markets before it hit here. Now, we have had instances where we have made not just me, other appraisers made contract and gotten a very nasty call from the buyer that says we weren't supposed to do that.
Oh.
We didn't think it would appraise for that.
So they were
It's-
just trying.
they just wanted
To get
to
it.
win the contract.
Yeah.
So they offered way over.
Right.
They took it. It's, and it's flying, and it's like, I worked my butt off to try and get that contract because I
Right.
thought that they wanted.
Yeah.
So then, you're flying a little too close to the sun when you do those type things. But that's happened not just to me, but to other appraisers as well. So you have to be careful when they do these contingencies and these things. They better be ready to pay up, because you
Yes.
don't know, because
You're
you're like, oh, well,
gambling it,
never,
if not.
my realtor told me it would never appraise.
Well.
that
Yeah, well, it did.
So I don't know if that answered your question. Did that answer?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else
I
on
wanna-
Zoom?
Amy,
Yes.
hey, Kathy Williams here.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey, listen, I sure appreciate you so much. I got in on the middle of something you were saying earlier, and I think it's real valuable. Well, the whole thing is, but where you said the equity will be up, it had to do with interest rates and prices going up or down, or could you tell us that, please?
Well, I'm a mortgage person is probably your best answer for that. But when when the homeowners are paying their mortgage with a lower rate, they're paying more into the equity every month and less into the interest. So that means their equity is growing faster than it maybe was before with a higher rate. So even if values do soften a bit, hopefully we won't be underwater as easy or as quicker. Now, some people will be, I mean, that's just natural, but it is for the current homeowners with these lower rates, they're chunking into the equity of their house every month at a better rate than maybe we were in the past when rates were 7% or 6% or something like that, where you're just, you're not making a dent in it for a long, long time. I don't know how those amortization charts work, but just the basic math would tell you that you're paying more toward the principal than you are before. So maybe even if we do soften or it slows, we won't see a disaster of I can't sell or I have to be foreclosed on, because, you know, have a house for 8 years, but I barely have made a dent in what.
Wow, yeah.
I think they said in 2021 that the just average Alabama homeowner had about $50,000 equity in their home. And so that means that we're not gonna, when everybody's going, oh, is it 08 again? Is it, the argument can't be there because now the equity is there where it wasn't before.
Right.
And now that the interest rates have dipped for so long, what she's saying is people, instead of paying towards interest, they're paying towards principal, which gives them equity,
It gives them a cushion.
in theory.
Right. They might not make 50, they might have 50,000 equity,
Right.
but they might have 10,000 equity, or
So
they
should
might
we
have,
lose it.
they might have enough equity to be able to sell their house and get out without bringing a check to closing, which, you know, would be good. So, you know, that's the argument for people continuing to buy homes, you know, at a reasonable rate. What you don't want to pay top dollar and high interest, which the market's not going to do that. They're just not. But it, you know, as you inch up, you get a little closer to doing that. I think.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Carroll.
Can I have one more question?
Yeah.
It's kind of a two-part question. The first thing is, have there been any guideline changes in the FHA, VA, FHA loans in this current market? And what's the difference in appraisals with the FHA conventional VA?
Okay. Well, there haven't been any recent changes. Now, I think the last change was maybe 6 years ago or 8 years ago. Conventional appraisals, the lender wants to know what condition the house is in, period. It is not my job or my responsibility, or they don't even to require repairs on a conventional. It's not my job. If the roof is leaking, hey, the roof's leaking, there's a picture. They might want a cost secure estimate. So the underwriter can do whatever they do and figure out, oh, is our buyer, you know, are they going to be able to handle this or whatever? The conventional loan, look, there's some rotten wood. Oh, there's no appliances in here. The floor covering's messed up. That's just what it is. It's all part of it. It is what it is, period. You know,
It's a
maybe
report.
it's just my report. I go, I report, and I send back, that's it. Now, VA and FHA, they have this type of loan, they guarantee well, I don't know if guarantee is the right word. They only want the property if it's move-in ready for the, it can be dated as anything. I mean, you could have shag carpet and whatever, it doesn't
It's
matter.
not the design.
Right, it's not the design or the decor, thank goodness, but it is, they want the health and safety and structural integrity of the property. So you cannot buy a house that has a rotten deck and rotten windows and peeling paint from pre-1978 construction with FHA without it being repaired. So you have to, for those, require repairs for the health, safety, and structural integrity. It used to be you would have some cosmetic things, like if the floor covering was you know, kind of worn, you might find, but they softened that up maybe 8 years ago. Maybe it was 8 years ago, I don't know. So, but you can't have holes in drywall, things like that. It really, the toilets need to be functioning. You can't have leaking plumbing. The showers, that's why utilities have to be on when we go. I know everybody's had that for FHA. So you gotta be able to, I gotta be able to turn the hot water heater on. I gotta be able to turn the air conditioner on in the summer, and in the winter, the heat needs to work. If it's there, it needs to work. So if you have an FHA and the dishwasher is broken, then you need to remove the dishwasher or replace it, because if it's there, it's gotta work. If the pool is there, it needs to be, the pump needs to be functioning, and it needs to be in sanitary.
So not
condition.
green and covered for the past 5 years. That is important for you.
Some appraisers would be like, if it's winter, you could assume that it, you've been told that it's whatever, but some might want to see it all working. And it's probably, the seller would probably make more money on it if they did fix it and get it working. For that, because like we just talked about, pools have gone up, so it's a benefit to have that. So VA is the same way. Now, when we talked about the reconsideration request, VA has different terminology. It's called Tidewater. So, but it's the same process of you turning in comparables sales, and you probably, generally speaking, you'll have less luck getting that changed with the VA than you will a regular FHA or commercial. But I did a house not too long ago, FHA, and there were so many repairs, the deal fell through. Now, I think had there been a better awareness from the seller that these items were going to have to be fixed, I think it would have, they would never would have accepted the FHA contract. So it's an awareness from your seller as a listing agent. Yeah, when you have all your things and one's FHA and one's conventional,
It could make the difference.
it could make if you have a lot of, if you're like, my house is in perfect condition, and you just go, but if you're, that is a big factor, is the type of financing that they're doing even though, because one might, the FHA is going to require repairs if you got some rotten wood, so you might be, $3,000 into getting that done.
And now with materials being priced so much and
Mm-hmm,
vendors being so busy.
mm-hmm.
Slade McElroy wants to know, do you go into the attic or on the roof or the crawl space?
Okay. I do not go on the roof. And only time that the appraiser has to inspect the crawl space and the attic is FHA and VA. And you I have to include a picture, but it is head and shoulders only.
You're just kind of getting yourself enough to take a picture.
When they say head and shoulders, it really just means my phone. Because
You have a
I'm not
selfie
going,
stick.
yeah, I'm not
The
going.
selfie stick would be good for
Right,
that.
but it up in maybe the Northeast where they have where you just walk up a full set of stairs and then you can walk around the whole attic, an appraiser probably would walk around a little bit, but crawl space and attic, I have absolutely never had an underwriter come back and say, I saw something in your picture of the crawl space, or I saw a picture in the attic. But I have done a new construction house where they were closing and they forgot to put the insulation in the attic and had to come back and put insulation in. So yes, you do have to do the attic and crawl space, but only FHA and VA, and it is just head and shoulders. And I don't know, but he gets other.
You're not
And
crawling
the
around
thing
in
with the appraisals, and there's some appraisers have better terminology in their report than I do, is when they have a definition for the word inspect, the appraiser inspected, they go further to explain that inspection is only the areas readily and easily viewable by a walking through that, and they have more specific verbiage that I have in there, that it is not a home inspection, and that a home inspection is recommended. It is only a cursory visible, I don't move furniture and look behind it for anything like that. I won't walk around on the roof, if you see something odd with the roof or it looks really old, or I only talk about the roof if I see interior water damage. So it's just not my area of expertise, and I just try to stay out of it but if I had particular expertise in roofs, I might feel confident saying something about it. But if I don't say when the roof was last replaced, then I don't know when it was last replaced.
One more thing for me. I know when we're as agents doing comps for, our sellers, we do like a specific time frame, like the last 180 days, 90 days, whatever. Is there a time frame that you all look at for comps, like for the last recent one sold? Or what's the time frame on those?
The maximum time frame we can use is a year.
Okay.
So for our first 3 comparables. Now, if you're doing a particularly difficult house where there's not a lot of comparables, for 4, 5, and 6, you could use an older sale to support value. You cannot use an older sale to make value. But if I had something that if mine were weak, but they were there, I might put in another. Where I haven't done that in a long time because my best sales are the past 180 days. Now, as our market starts declining, I'm going to go back and back and back, and then I'm going to be trying to justify why I'm using a sale that was 11 months ago. If we start to go down, but what you can do, and what Fannie Mae came out with a statement about a year ago, because appraisers were having such difficult time using more recent sales, they realized that because most lenders want sales within 90 days or 120 days, we have to go to detail if we go over 6 months. Well, they were realizing that we were having trouble getting those values because even the sales 6 months, 8 months ago were too low, but they might be more similar. What they've allowed us to do, which in all the years I've been doing this, I've never done it as much as I've done it in the past 6 months, is do a time of sale adjustment. So if your market's increasing, I can use a sale that's 8 months old, and then I can add on the time of sale adjustment, $15,000. They wouldn't have sold that, 9 months ago for that, but it's the most similar. So they put out a statement that encouraged use of older sales with the time of sale adjustment if it meant using a more similar sale. They wanted more similar properties versus just the time frame. So, but you got to make sure that in your data, like I have to do a little math with the market conditions that shows, I can't just make up a number of what it's increased. So I've got my little method of what number I use so that if I ever got in trouble for doing it, I can say, well, this is what I used. So,
Like an algebra class, here's my homework.
this is, I did, the
Here's
MC
the work.
form, I took the average, or the median house sold, 6 to 12 months ago, sold for this. And with the past 90 days, the median was this. There's been a 9.5% increase. So I used, 4.25% just to be conservative. And then
Slade McElroy wants to know, how far can comps be from the subject?
it depends on the area. If you're in an urban area with lots of sales, the typical guideline is 1 mile. So if you were in a specific neighborhood, let's say Deer Creek, they would want you, obviously, you're going to have enough sales in Deer Creek. You have no business going to Tuscany for a house in Deer Creek, even though you might be within the mile for that. But if I'm in town, you can go a mile. They don't like you crossing major roadways and barriers. So let's say you're in Del Reyta, you might be within a mile to go to Forest Hills, but you wouldn't really want to cross over to a different, but with that said, if you need it in this increasing market, I've said it's further away, it's in another neighborhood, but it's within the 1 mile proximity guideline. And then you're kind of using that evidence back against the underwriter because they always want to know, well, why'd you use this or that? Well, it's in the mile. You said I couldn't go without a mile. So with that outside of a mile, so I'm going within the mile, and that's what it is. But obviously location, the closer you get, the sooner you get, the better your report is. And then you can go, but now if you're in a suburban area, you can go 2 miles or more. Let's say you're up in Prattville or Millbrook or wherever you're working, you're not going to have that much. Or let's say you're doing a giant, huge, high quality home that there's only a few scattered. Let's say you're in Greystone here, or something, and you're doing this, McAlpin property that's whatever. Clearly you're not going to find it there. So you can go, and even though you might be in town, you could go 5 or 6, or I would go the entire Montgomery County of any home that wasn't on acreage. I might find one on Bakehead, I might find one in Wind Lakes, and I might find whatever, because that buyer, they were looking for certain quality and size. Like, oh, I'm gonna, I've got a about 900 to 1.3 million, what are you gonna show me? Well, you're not just gonna go to one neighborhood. You're gonna say, well, let's spread our wings here a little bit. And so you can justify in your report of those properties are scattered throughout the market area. So clearly you had to exceed your 1 mile. General guideline is 1 mile.
So someone's in Brookview, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If someone's in Brookview with something, they shouldn't go to Emerald Mountain.
If they're in Brookwood, oh, that's a hard one.
This was a specific one for another client, another agent. Here we.
You can't, if you have sales in your neighborhood, you can't skip those scales and go somewhere else. But if you don't have anything similar, you could go, because technically the same school, you got that same thorough, you're basically going down that same road to get
You're
into
going
the
down the same
summary.
route.
This is when the agent should get a reconsideration.
So possibly, yeah, you could, if you got the same age house, and Emerald Mountain's gonna be older than Brookwood.
Yep.
So, if you don't have enough of similar, yes, you could. That would be your rural area. You could say, okay, we gotta go a little further because we don't have enough. It's tough. It depends on the size of the house, and if you got 10 sales that show something different in Emerald Mountain, you can't go to Brookwood. But if you just have 2 or 3 and you want to grab a couple extras and sprinkle it in and work, the job most appraisers want, it's a lot easier when my job works. When I make a contract, then I send it in and I don't have to deal with it. The last thing I want is
To be arguing.
it's a reconsideration request.
Yeah.
So you come in low, it ruins my day to come in low. And I think for most appraisers, you really want it to work.
You want to be able to justify the contract price.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah, because I don't want a reconsideration request.
Right.
I don't want to deal with
And
this
you're not
next
just
week.
trying to come in low because you feel like it should be lower.
Correct. I don't want a reconsideration request because that's an hour more of a time. I'm not making another dime on.
Right, and you're not able to work on.
To be honest,
You're not
yeah.
able to work on new deals, you just have to keep.
I'm not making any money when I'm doing your reconsideration request.
Right.
So that's why it's good to point out in advance what you thought. So if you want to go into reconsideration, go ahead and put this in your cap that maybe.
This is an old, so it wasn't mine.
Yeah, but no, so yeah, there's a lot of gray area and a lot of talking out of both sides of your mouth and trying to really figure out what you have available. If you don't have anything available, I probably have, I don't know if I have or not. I don't know. I really have no idea.
Do you do a lot in the commercial space?
I don't do any commercial. So
Okay.
residential appraisers, we're not, our license doesn't carry that.
Okay.
I can do up to 5 units, like so a multifamily property, yes, but if it gives 6-unit property, I can't do it.
All right, let's see, Jasmine, so it's good for our clients to buy over appraisal since they'll be setting the market for their neighborhood. So she's asking, is it good to do the appraisal gap? I think is the question.
As
As a buyer's agent,
a buyer's agent,
I think that's,
well, you certainly don't want.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, y'all.
I don't.
But yeah, as a buyer's agent, because we just put in the we just want to bid the other day. We did 5K over appraisal, which it was only against 2 other offers. Usually if it's that low of amount of offers on, I usually don't go over appraisal. But what I just heard was, once we do buy over appraisal and it sells, then now we just set new comps for the area. And now people will have to, use that as a comp, the over appraisal price, which is 5K over appraisal, to set more comps for the area, which can potentially raise the value in the neighborhood. Or at least,
but really it's your buyer that's raising the what they're willing to pay is raising the value for the neighborhood. That's still the buyer setting the not necessarily the appraiser setting it. And I don't know if I would say it's good for the neighborhood. It's good for your person to get the house that they want for what they're willing to pay. And then because all that data will be gone, it only depends on if you're going to then list the neighbor's house, whether that would be good. But then, you wouldn't want your buyer paying more than what they wanted to pay, just so that the neighbor could sell their house for more, because the neighbor's only gonna be able to sell their house for what somebody's willing to pay for it. So I think that the idea would be just to let that happen organically. As far as my buyer, you were willing to pay up to $305,000 for this house. Let's offer 300 off, but we're not, or let's offer 305. We're not sure if it'll appraise. I want to make sure I get it. So I think keeping that organic, if that makes sense, will help.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Drive it.
And I guess I'm,
If you're worried about it not appraising and them not getting it and the seller not selling it for the agreed on price, then if you're worried about it not appraising, I've never thought about it. You could even have a contingent, well, I probably shouldn't even say it, about a contingency that maybe they'll reconsider if it doesn't appraise down to a certain amount. I don't know. So rather than, but right now the sellers aren't going to do that, because they know they can sell it the
It's
next
still a
day.
seller's market.
Yeah, it's a seller's market, so they're not going to do that.
Well,
So
for you guys, Jasmine, y'all are doing a lot of work in the Selma neighborhoods, and I think your question comes from kind of revitalizing some of those neighborhoods. I think we're having a conversation.
well, no, not even. In Selma, it's not, they're not big. The agents there don't even know what overappraisal is. Like, they're not, it's no bidding wars in Selma to say. I feel like it may be like 2 or 3. I think it may be like 2 bids on the house, maybe 3 or 4, but it isn't as strong as like the Prattville area, which is the area I'm talking about right now. It's like Deepville, Prattville area. And usually every time I sell in Prattville, I have to do over appraisal.
It's more competitive. For
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, but
And for
I was
you,
just asking because my client right now, he bid it over appraisal. He's a contractor, and he, kind of knows about the market, so on and so. But that was a conversation we had just about building up the value in the neighborhood, just the potential of it. Not saying that's, what's his approach going in. He really loved the house. That's the only reason. Like, he was a low baller all the way until we got to that house. So that's the only reason why he went over appraisal. But just kind of get an idea of, I just like to kind of think things through all the way, especially when I'm talking to my clients. If that is a potential thing that could happen, like, hey, you bid over appraisal, the value can raise. I would like to kind of communicate that. And I was just trying to clarify
yeah, it does go
my
in.
approach
Yeah,
to my consultations.
you're correct. It does go in and set the bar a little higher, but that was because that was paid, and that kind of because that's what the market is paying. So as far as, kind of keeping the appraiser out, the appraiser doesn't need to be setting the market. It's the buyer, and these contingencies are saying it's the buyer.
well, the buyer pool is willing to pay above and beyond.
Right.
And
What I can prove on paper.
Right.
So that's the new market.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I mean, there's been a lot of enlightenment. Anybody else have any questions this morning? Let me see if there's any chat. No chat. Well, Amy, we appreciate you joining us.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. This was
Anytime.
like so excellent.
And just, if you have a question, just call.
Yeah.
And, it's easier to have questions answered on the front end sometimes with a proper question. I don't have a card,
Okay.
so, but I can just take down your number.
I'll get Amy's information. Let's see.
Yeah, you would send it out on issues and out on mail.
Right, okay, so Katie's just saying, if you make an offer with the appraisal gap, with the appraisal gap, be sure to state in your contract the maximum amount your buyer is willing to pay. So you're not just leaving that open-ended. That's great advice, Katie.
Up to.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna share Amy's information with everybody. I'll do a follow-up to get that. But
Anyway, it was a great conversation today. I'm so glad that we had you, guest speaker today.
Anytime, anytime.
I hope everybody has a great day.
It's hard, it's hard. I know your job's hard.
Well, I
Yeah,
think just
yeah.
like for us, sometimes the appraiser can get a bad rap of like, oh, they're just kind of going there flippantly. They just decided they didn't like this house, which is not the case. Just like we don't just put a sign in the yard, you know? So I think that this conversation helps us educate our buyers and sellers around what does the appraiser do? What are they looking
Yeah,
to provide?
yeah.
And it's, none of us are here to keep people out of.
Right,
buying.
and it's hard when you have so much, when you have so much on the line, and your buyer does, and your seller does, and they have big life decisions and big life moves. Nothing's more stressful than moving,
Emotional.
and it's very emotional, and then it goes away to this person that perceivably has everything in their hands, and they're just gonna decide what they wanna do. But it's really not like that, where we are completely responsible to the underwriter. And I have had, I've had back and forth, I've had my rear handed to me by the underwriter for a report, and I have done the revert, and battled back. I mean, so the underwriter is the ultimate decider of what we put in the report, whether they're willing to accept it or not.
Yeah, go ahead and add those pull materials and see what they send back. They'll let you know, at no added value. When you say, oh, pull equipment to convey, or the shed, that you start adding stuff in the contract, and the underwriter will let you know.
Yeah, well, at least put in their personal property.
Very
numbers, so,
quickly.
Yeah, that's not, that doesn't
And
really
we're like,
matter.
we're not closing tomorrow.
Amy gave me a whole new perspective of appraisals. She didn't even remember, no. It wasn't even a deal I was on. She called me I had a deal beginning of this year that it was a cash sale. My seller just wanted to get out the home. They didn't owe a lot on the home, so they took a really low offer. And she called me, I guess she was appraising something else in the neighborhood. And she called and said, hey, why was this so low?
Why did you list
Why
it like
we
that?
listed like 125, they sold it like 110.
Yeah.
And she was like, it didn't look right. Why did you do that? And I just told her, and she was like, okay, well, I'm not using that.
A distress
So
sale.
I've never known an appraiser to like call an agent and say,
Right.
hey, what's going on?
I'm gonna call and I'm hoping, please tell me there was something wrong with this house. Please tell me there was something
Yeah,
wrong
and
with
it's
this
yeah.
house. So I don't have to
Yeah.
include it. I want you to say, oh, they had a foundation problem, or the roof was a problem, or it was distress sale. The people were getting a divorce and they were doing a court. Oh, okay, well then that's not market. So we can put that aside.
But that was, I was like, oh, appraisers are really nice now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Amy is.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of them.
All right, I'm in the same. I hope everybody has a great day. See you guys soon.